In this Blender tutorial, I will show you a couple of ways to make hair created in the particles editor look a bit more realistic and get around the problem of hair not standing out from the skull, hopefully. Other tutorials can be found in my playlists. Okay. Now, I'm going to assume you've got some knowledge of working in Blender, otherwise this tutorial will take an age. So what I've done is I've created a copy of this head, which is nothing special, got it off of Make Human. So if I just hide it, and I've cleaned up the copy, and it hasn't got any color to it. So let's give it a material. So select your materials and then new, and I'm going to select principled BSDF, and I'll select hair, principled hair BSDF, and you can change the color. I'll leave this as this sort of dark brown color. Okay, now I'm going to make the body visible again, come into solid view, and once you've created your copy, you'll probably need to make sure your origin is in the middle. Quite often you'll find these bodies, the origins are on the floor, so just make sure the origin's in the middle of your copy. You can do this by selecting Object, Set Origin to Geometry. Obviously I've already done this, and I'm going to just make this fractionally smaller by pressing S followed by 0.999. You may find you'll have to do something different. So this is now set inside. If I go into basic view, you can't see it, which is what you want. Okay. Now there are so many ways you can work with hair in Blender, so I'm not going to attempt to show you every single option, and I'm not even going to try and do a full head of hair because you need to spend a bit of time. But what I will do is go into edit mode, and for ease just use the face select. Now a lot of people use weight paint on for hair, and it works, but effectively all that's doing is just selecting areas. Then you've got to create groups. Oh, and it's a nightmare. So for ease, just to get you started, what I would do is select A, so all of your copy is selected. Then under face, select extrude individual faces, then move your mouse so that they come out. Now if you hit your right mouse button so everything snaps back, hit Control followed by I, and that should invert your selection. Hit delete and then select only faces. Select A again to reselect everything. Come up to mesh, select clean up, delete loose, and that will remove any vertices that you've got from the faces that you deleted. Press A again to select everything, and then P, and you can separate now by selecting by loose parts. Back into object mode, and you'll find it difficult selecting these, so what you'll have to do is find your main body and hit the little eye up here so it's invisible. So looking from the right hand side, I'm going to select some of these faces by holding down shift and then select. Now make sure that you haven't selected any behind. If you have, It's because you probably selected a gap here. So try and keep your mouse in the middle and not select everything on the other side. It can be a bit difficult. And I'll do the same for these here, say. And again, make sure that you haven't got anything selected on the other side. That's the hard bit, I find, because invariably I always select something the other side. Now hold down Control followed by J, and that should join these. If it doesn't, just select a few, join those, and then carry on and join the rest of it together. So that's given me an area I can work with. So that I can find it again, obviously I've got a lot of bits here. So all I'm going to do is just double click the highlighted one, backspace, and call it something that I can find easily. HD1 will do. So that just means that I can find this and edit it at any time I want, rather than having to trawl through this lot. Okay, so I'm going to make the body visible. Press 1 on my numbers pad, and I'm going to select the particle properties button, this one here. Select the plus and select hair. One of the problems with Blender, unless you set it up, you'll end up with all sorts of problems. And this is how I do it. Other people may do it differently. So I've got too many strands here. So I'll bring this down to something like 100, which is a bit better. And let's make the length a little bit more, something I can work with. Now this is where I find you need to change the settings. So first of all, segments, 5 is not enough, so you need to take this up to at least 10. Now viewport display, I'm going to work with 5 strand steps, so take this up from 2 to 5. But what that will mean is that you'll have to select render and change your steps to match to at least 5, because when you come to render it, if you don't change this, whatever it won't look the same. I won't go into details, but if you get your hair nice and close using the viewport strands, when you render, they'll be coming through her bumps up here. So that's that. So that's set that up. So just to recap, segments I've increased from 5 to 10. Render amount I've reduced to 100. Possibly could even use 50. Path 5 and strand steps 5. Okay. Up to object and select your particle view. Press N on your keyboard, and where it says deflect emit, remove the tick. In options, the path steps, take this up to 5, and then you can press N. Incidentally, this will stay the same as you go around doing your hair. You don't have to do this again. Okay, so there's quite a lot of things you can do in this particles editor. It's just you have to sort of think outside the box. So rather than just brushing your hair, what you might want to consider doing is, you've got this curve here and it says path. You've got something here called point. Got a load of dots. Select this. So if I right click here, I can select the tips, which means I can now press G and grab them about. I could also if I wanted to, press R and rotate them. You can select this proportional editing button here and rotate them. It's not perfect, but just give it a bit of a rotation. You can change this by rolling your middle mouse. Also, in this mode, when I use the brush, I'll only brush pretty much the selected ends. So let's just go back to the path and brush this down. Take your time. If you want to do it quick, don't change the settings up here. Just roll your mouse right out and you'll find this works quicker than if you zoomed in. Okay, so obviously this is far too long, so I'm going to just use this cut here and cut the hair. Back to the brush and start brushing this hair so that it looks a bit like something akin to a bit of hair. Now you'll need to take your time. Also, if rather than just brushing from the edges, if you place your pointer in the middle, you can sort of randomize your hair a bit better. It really is like brushing. Okay, so that's not too bad. Now another thing, if you come back to this point button here, if I say, I don't know, if I press C for a circle select and just select some of these vertices, actually I should have deselected these, so Alt A to deselect everything and then say C to select a few here. If I use the brush, it will only move the vertices I've selected. So I'm not going to go into great detail. Like I said, I'm not going to show you how to do a full head of hair. This is just a very simple sort of edit, if you like, of hair. So we'll go with this for now. So I'm going to go into object mode again, and I'm going to hit render up here, this button here. Now the one problem you'll probably find is you'll be in Eevee, so let's start looking at doing this a bit differently. So select your render properties button, select Eevee and then cycles. Things should start looking a bit better. I'm going to change one thing here as well. I don't like this filmic look. I prefer the standard one, so that'll do for that. Okay, so we've got some basic looking hair. It's not perfect, but it's a start. Back to the particles tab, and you've got some options. Select the arrow next to children and then select interpolation. Forget simple. Now you need to think, what you see here is 10 times the 100. When you render it, you'll get 100 times 100. So think about how many strands you want. But first of all, I would select hair shape and take the diameter down to about, let's say 0.1, looks quite good. And then, like I said, think about the number of hairs you want to see. So I'm going to just match the top with the bottom. And for this tutorial, that will do. You can turn this off if your computer's getting a bit slow, but let's go back to this. Doing it this way, if I go back into standard view and then particles, I can still carry on editing little parts of this until I'm happy with it, rather than trying to do a full head of hair. So I don't know, this will do. And like I showed you, you can select different areas. Alt A to deselect everything, don't forget, and select these, and making sure that they're still in that mode. You can just drag these out, so it's just working with your hair until you're happy. And that's the reason why I break it up. It's a lot easier than trying to do a large area, because I can reselect any of these once I've created them and keep changing it. Okay, I'm going to do one more thing. Obviously you can play around with this to, well, forever. It's time consuming, I'll be the first to admit. One problem with Blender is trying to make sure that the hair doesn't disappear inside. So what I'm going to do is attempt to show you how to get around that problem. So I'm going to hide the body again, and then press 7 on my numbers pad, and I'll select these here. So I'm just going to select these 6 here, make sure I haven't selected anything else, and then Control J and join them. Make the body visible, and again just give this something that you know you can find easily. So this will be HD2. Okay, so again, particles plus hair, and again I'll work with 100 here. Change the length if you want, but don't forget you can always cut it, but we'll just change the length here. Not too much. Segments I'll take up to 10. Path steps 5, because it won't look right otherwise when you render. Strand steps 5, and then back into particle edit. Okay, so I'm going to just brush these down. So I'm going to go path up here, and I'm going to literally crack these down by zooming out and then zooming in and starting to shape this. I'm going to do this quite quickly because I don't want this tutorial to go on forever. Okay, so we'll make this so that it sort of appears to go over her shoulder. And I think I'll leave the length like this, won't bother cutting it. Okay, as you can see, because I've combed this in this direction, maybe take it back a bit as well. This is a reason why I deselect this, because it will stop you wrapping hair around otherwise. So anyway, once I've deselected, or rather I've shaped the hair to something I think I may want it to look like, try not to bring it inside too much of hair that's below. Don't forget you can select areas and modify them. So problem with Blender, more you comb, you get this problem, things start to disappear. Obviously her hair doesn't come out from this point here, you want it to come out from here. So I'll show you a simple way to resolve this. Again, sometimes you have to do a fair bit of work, but if you select this points tab up here, make sure that everything's deselected. If you're not sure, just press Alt followed by A. Now if you right click, select roots, right click again and select more. Come up to your particles editor and select subdivide, and just hold down shift and hit R a couple of times, and that will just subdivide it by another 2. So you can comb these up, or you could just press G and just drag them up. You don't have to have this selected to do that either. You can deselect it and press G and grab them up. It's probably better not to have it selected. And try and get a shape that you think might look half sensible. I know this won't, but I'm more interested in this, the join to the sculpt here. And again, object mode, let's go into render and start thinking about the hair I want to use. Match up the render amount. Just look at what you've got. So that's not looking too bad. And you can always go back and start combing your hair again to make it look a bit more sensible. Separate the strands if you want. You need to just keep working at it. This is the reason why I separate areas, because you can work in different areas. So I'm not really going to do any more than that. You can, I could if I wanted to with this, say, maybe edit some of these by rotating them. Doesn't always work that well, but I could rotate these around. You can play around with this. There's so many different ways. Certainly you don't need to use curves. That is a hard way of doing things. I wouldn't even bother unless I want to do something really intricate. And that's basically all there is to it. Hopefully that's helped someone. Thank you for watching. Cheers.